Okay. My life? Oh, there we are. So many tech issues.
It says so
Well,
on this side.
welcome to Relentless Courage. I have a very special treat today. I'm so excited. Today, I have a guest that is very special in my life. This is my uncle Bob, Robert Harris. And before I get started, I want to just tell you a little bit about Bob. Bob's a keynote speaker, a consultant, coach, and a personal growth expert. He's an entrepreneur, helps companies grow their bottom line by investing in their communities and their employees. Um, my favorite part, by learning how to take 100% responsibility for the outcome of your life. That's the foundation that Bob uses for making a difference in the lives of others. So let me tell you just for 1 second. First of all, thank you so much for joining me. I'm super happy to have you.
I'm loving it.
Uh, so this is really special to me because in my new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, one of the opening stories is around Bob, my Uncle Bob. So when I was young, Bob terrified me. Did you know that?
So, yes, turned out to be a good thing.
It turned out to be a good thing. So I was really scared of Bob and his friends because I didn't understand what the problem was. I knew something wasn't quite right. I saw you guys with your music and your long, hair and sort of lifeless eyes with most of them. And I'm like, something is not right with these people. None of you tried to hurt me, but there was something not right there. And I didn't find out until later that it was heroin, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So first of all, I want to step back. Thank you for your service. You actually, today is Veterans Day and you served. And I want to take a moment to thank you for that.
thank
And
you.
so was it in the Navy that started or was it somewhere else?
It well, it's it started more after I got out of the military because I was a corpsman in the Navy and worked in the radiology, the OR, and I actually traded some things for. I was mostly smoking pot and stuff then, but it kind of started there, and then really started after I got out.
Okay. So so it really wasn't in the military, it was afterwards. And you grew up in a lot of chaos too. I mean, it's fair to say that you guys had some chaos and some stuff that you had to overcome as well in your childhood. And I touch on that a little bit in the book, but um, you are the reason that I was very anti-drugs. So I'm not sure if you know that, but you are the reason I was very anti-drugs. I mean, not that I didn't, have a drink here and there or whatever. I wasn't a goody two shoes, but I was not one of those people who experimented with drugs, you know. So, and that was in large part because you terrified me. I had shock therapy.
Well, I have kind of several concepts that I try to live by, and one of them is that even in our most negative times, we're teaching.
Yeah.
So, can we realize that
Um,
good and bad are going on at the same time?
oh, I like that.
And so, it can you also identify the good that is taking place rather than only focusing on the bad?
So even in our worst times, we are teaching.
Yes,
Oh, I like that a lot. Would you say that you thought that back then?
I'm not sure I could even think back then, but and whatever I was thinking, because another one of the concepts I live by is there's nothing off but our thinking.
Ah,
So, and our best thinking gets us to wherever we are at that moment.
I
It,
love that. So
yeah,
if your best thinking is tainted, if your best thinking is pretty skewed, then that's the best you're gonna get.
that's correct. I think we do things out of a positive intention to feel better about ourselves and what we think is right, and it just often isn't right.
Wow, I like that. So before we get to the really cool part in the book, that's one of my favorite parts. A lot of stuff happened before that part. So your brother, my
Yeah,
other uncle, was murdered. There was a part where he was murdered, and it was a pretty traumatic thing. Um, well, as traumatic as it was for me, it was probably much more traumatic for you guys, but it was pretty traumatic for a little kid. It was very chaotic, lots of screaming, and just there was a lot happening. I felt very lost in all of it. Um, but that had to be very hard for you, that situation. I know I don't know the whole story about behind that, but I know you've sort of been very candid with me about you felt like and if this is too much, or if I shouldn't be bringing it up, then just please tell me and we'll move on to something else. But I remember at one point you told me that you felt like it was supposed to be you.
It it should have been me. It I mean, we all make choices, but he was going to UC Santa Cruz. He came down. The whole purpose, in my mind, from what he told me, was to try to help me stop using drugs. And I was really high and was getting ready to get on a motorcycle and go do a drug deal, and a couple ounces of heroin hanging in my shirt pocket. And he went to do it for me because he thought I wouldn't make it back. And he didn't make it back.
Oh, yeah. So that's a story that has left its mark on our family legacy for sure. And you've always gotten very emotional when you tell that story, and it's I didn't know that until when I was writing my book. I mean, one thing I love about writing your story is you end up interviewing people and understanding so much more context around things you thought you knew that you don't, because I was seeing it through a child's eyes at the time, and I can't imagine how painful that must have been. Um, and you're the one that gave me the information for the book about something I didn't know. You tried to end your life with an overdose after that.
Yes. And you know what? It wasn't because of Ray's death. I didn't use that experience to try to quit using drugs. I used it to use actually more. But it was just Ray's death was a part of it, to where I was just kind of tired of everything.
Oh.
And because I knew that if I was going to do that, I was also on a methadone program at the VA hospital, and was still strung out on heroin at the same time. So I knew if I was going to end my life, it would be with an overdose, because that seemed easy for me.
Mm.
And it was when I had gotten some fresh heroin in from Mexico, and you could smell it the moment the person that had it walked into my house. And which may not make sense to a lot of people, but it it has an odor to it that is unmistakable. And I knew the moment I smelt it, that was the day.
Oh.
And I felt that there was nobody out there that cared whether I lived or died, that I was basically unlovable.
Mm.
And so that was my method. And yet a girlfriend of mine who left work and happened to come to the house found me laying in the floor with a needle hanging out of my arm. I'm turning blue. And she wasn't 100 pounds soaking wet, but drugged me to the car and took me to the VA hospital, where actually the next day, I would tell this even in stories I tell when I speak, is I woke up the next day strapped to a bed, and I knew I wasn't in heaven or hell because of the green institutional walls. But the moment I woke, up, I knew I was loved.
Mm.
I knew my life was going to work. I knew I would be a teacher of some sort. I I just knew everything was going to be okay.
Wow.
And how never came into the picture. I just knew it was going to happen. That
Wow.
I knew somebody loved me.
That's amazing. That's so powerful. And I know there's a lot of people watching right now that are still in that place, or they know someone, they're taking care of someone who's in that place and they're still struggling with sobriety. And so I just want to thank you for just being so raw and so candid, because it's something that a lot of us don't understand. And yet it's something that a lot of people watching are living with. And we've got to find a way to help people through this and get through it, which is why I wanted you here.
Well, I think so many times we tried to, I mean, I didn't get high to be high. I got high to numb out, to avoid what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And emotions are another concept. Emotions are just energy in motion.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we try to block them,
Say that again.
emotions are just energy in motion.
Mm.
So when we try to block that energy, it's like building a dam. Well, there's a point where you can't open the floodgates fast enough. So the dam will break when it chooses if you don't handle what's going on.
I love that.
And that may not be a good time
Yeah, it might be a much worse time.
because it can not only flood you, it will flood anyone downstream of you. So
Mhm.
family, friends, business, it doesn't matter. It just takes over.
Wow. So you ended up, through the grace of God and a lot of hard work, a lot of elbow grease, and some pretty cool people in your life,
Yes,
turning your life around. You
yes,
ended up pulling through that situation. You turned it around and you learned some pretty cool things. I remember you were doing some counseling at, was it juvenile hall?
yes.
So you did some counseling at juvenile hall. You started coaching people. And there comes this full circle moment. I'm 25, had sort of, went through some early childhood stuff, and that was one thing. I think, a lot of people watching this have gone through early childhood trauma, but most of my trauma later on was self-induced. I mean, let's just call a spade, right? So some of my trauma was self-induced. Something happened after I found out I had cancer. I went through this wicked depression, went on Prozac, and sort of went crazy. And when I mean I went crazy, I don't mean I like went crazy. I mean, I just sort of didn't care about anything, and my behavior was just wacky. So my life was a little bit just out of control. I knew I needed to get off the Prozac. The Prozac was not working at all for my brain. I was very just dangerously impulsive with it. So I am now trying to turn my life around, getting things straightened out. And I remember you were at that point, we weren't super close because we just had never been super close when I was growing up because I was scared of you. But now I wasn't scared of you. I knew you had your life together. But you were in Hawaii teaching a seminar, and actually on NLP, and I love NLP, by the way. So you were working at this NLP organization, and you're like, you should come out to Hawaii. And I thought, well, there's nothing any seminar is going to teach me. There's no self-help that's going to happen here. But a trip to Hawaii, that could work. So, so I remember going to Hawaii, and it was really crazy that the person that I was so scared of when I was young, this person who was a heroin addict, this person who went through all the things you just talked about, tried to end your own life with a heroin overdose. In my book, it was very special for me to be able to write that was a full circle moment because it was you that taught me the one word that changed everything for me. Do you know what that word was?
But I'm sorry, it just went. I lost a picture of what
I
you
said,
said
do
there.
you remember what the word was?
Yes, responsibility.
Yeah. And when you first said it, when you said, how much responsibility are you willing to take? I was a little offended because I'm like, it's cancer. I can't take responsibility for cancer. And you didn't stop. You didn't back down. And you said, I didn't ask you to take the blame. You said, I asked you how much responsibility you would take. And I remember that you wrote, I'm going to draw this. You drew a big circle. You drew a big circle and you split it in half. And then you put 50% or you put 100%, like so. It looks something like this. And you said, if you take 50% and you pointed to the 50%, you said you have that much of a chance to change the outcome, but someone else has power over the rest of it. And I was like, what? And you said it's not blame. It's the ability to respond. Do you remember that?
Yes. And that's an important piece, because I don't think that's a concept of mine. 100% ability. I'm 100% responsible for every outcome in my life.
Mhm.
Now, do I live every day from a place of 100% responsibility? No. But I've learned how to bust my own games quicker.
I love that.
And that's what, another concept is tell the truth faster, that I live by. Then not only to others, but to ourselves. And even I wrote curriculum for the Office of Criminal Justice for gang and drug prevention that was taught in Orange County. And one of the things I worked with, it was basically fifth grade, kind of like DARE, but they allowed me to, I kept asking and asking to take it to, I said, fifth grade's too late.
It's too
It
late.
needs to go earlier. So they let me go to fourth grade and third grade. Third graders are so cool. But I would always teach them about the uh-oh feeling. And the uh-oh feeling is, if you're in a park playing and all of a sudden you look up and see somebody and you get that feeling inside, uh-oh, get the hell out of there. Get out of there. Trust that feeling.
I love that. I used to tell Chloe the same thing. Listen to your tummy.
Yes, because it's that feeling where you can bust your own games.
So we tell our kids, but we don't do it ourselves.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so learning how, but we were never really taught to. So learning how to take that responsibility and to listen to that part of us. I don't believe that God made any junk. And for people listening, if you believe that God never gives you anything you can't handle, then to believe that means that every answer to every problem is already in you.
Oh.
Can you recognize it?
So I love that. But I promise you, there are some people listening right now, because I get messages from them, who don't feel that way. They don't think that God doesn't give them stuff they can't handle. They feel like they can't handle it. So what would you say to someone like that? Because you've been there.
Well, you know what? I can absolutely understand it. I had to go commit a crime and turn myself in to be able to be sentenced into a drug program because I wouldn't stay under my own. They would get in my face, I would get in theirs, I'd get kicked out because of a threat of violence. So now, did I do that intentionally so I could get kicked out and say, hey, I did my part? But the thing is I did this because when a judge told me you will go into a drug program for 18 months at the VA hospital, that was a sister program to Synanon, an attack therapy type of program, or go to prison. Now, I'm not stupid. I wasn't going to prison. So I go to this drug program. So for those people that don't believe that he never gives you anything you can't handle, I mean, being a junkie, you're already at the bottom of the barrel. Well, I got kicked out of that program after 6 weeks because they said I was too negative for the program.
They said you were too negative for a drug rehab program.
To live with 30 other junkies.
Oh,
so my God. All of a sudden I found out there was a whole new bottom that I never even imagined. Yet it was the best thing that happened to me because I got into another program that wasn't an attack therapy program. It was a self-esteem based, reality therapy based program that just taught me about my behaviors. It made me aware of what I was doing. And that helped me.
I like that.
So it became my responsibility to change, not someone else attacking me or not someone else trying to rebuild me the way they thought I should be. It was totally on me. And that worked.
So how good did it feel to know that you were able to now sort of coach people through these times in their lives?
Well, I had some of my clients one time that I was asking, and I wanted them to give me a word. I wanted to create some kind of brochure or something about me. And so give me a word that would describe me. And actually, the word that came up the most was brutal. I'm like, brutal? Come on.
It must be genetic. I get the
Yeah.
same thing all
And
the
all of
time.
us, well, this attorney that I was working with, she told me, she goes, no, you are. You never let us get away with anything. And I
Interesting.
thought, wow, because all meaning is context dependent. I wasn't looking at brutal that way. So when we see life, sometimes we're seeing it in snapshots. You got to take in the big picture. You got to look at the context of everything that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll gain the meaning. So
I love that.
again, for anybody listening that has family or anyone or themselves going through this, you just look for the positive that's going on around you and latch on to it.
Mm, I love that. So before we end today, so you just gave us one good tip. Is there any other tip you would suggest either to people who are struggling or to family members who are just sort of over it? They just are having a hard time with patience and, with someone that in their life that is, I know that as a result of how I grew up, I didn't have tolerance for later, when people in my family needed me, I was like, nope, keep your drama, not my monkey, not my circus. You need to keep it over there.
Well, I kind of, when something's going on and people do something that pisses me off about something, I just remember that hurt people hurt people.
Hmm.
So, what was their hurt? How were they hurt? Because they may have been going through what I was going through a long time ago.
Hmm.
So, I just have some understanding. And I believe that, there's no failure in life. It's one of the concepts from NLP. There's no failure in life, there's just feedback.
Yeah.
And so, us paying attention to that feedback, again, it's all about, when I was in Hawaii, one of the things I learned about ancient Hawaii was there really was no mental illness. And because the kahunas were kind of like our PhDs.
Uh-huh.
So there was kahuna of dance, kahuna of farming, kahuna of fishing. And when they had issues, they'd go to their kahuna and learn how to deal with it. And it's really kind of interesting because they would teach something called hakalau,
Uh-huh.
and which is basically going into peripheral vision. Because when you're angry, you're in tunnel vision.
Right.
When you go into peripheral vision, you're unable to have that same emotion.
We do the same thing in martial arts.
So, and that takes in the big picture.
Also, when
So,
we're fearful, we do that.
yes, I've taught skiers because when I would ski, I would look at my skis and crash but then I learned to look down the hill and take in the big picture. Next, guess what? Sometimes I made it down there. So
Right.
but it changes the game. And I think how we communicate with anyone that is going through something tough, we never really learned how to communicate. It was you talk, I listen, I talk, you listen. And if the glaze looked was going over somebody, we just thought they're thick as a brick, they're not getting it. But communication is 100% on both sides. I'm 100% responsible right now for your audience understanding what I'm talking about.
I like that.
And because the definition of communication is the response you get. And
Love that.
that's what you want to pay attention to.
I love that.
It
So I want to thank you because that conversation that we had in Hawaii literally changed the trajectory of my life. So from that point on, there was something about it that just like was someone threw water in my face. It was like, it's not blame, it's the ability to respond. And I'll never forget that when you said that, it's the ability to respond. Responsibility is the ability to respond. And I was like, oh, okay. So it doesn't mean I have to like be at fault. It just means I need to like, or I want to, not I need to, I want to be able to respond. And all of a sudden it just changed. It was a game changer. I'm like, why wouldn't I want to do that? And suddenly I went home and just like kicked it into gear. It was really crazy. Um, so it was really important. It was a hugely pivotal moment in my life. So from being very, I didn't think I was a victim, but I think I was acting like a victim without realizing it. And you sort of busted that game, if you will. And so that was really cool. I was able to go home and just sort of get myself together, and it was awesome. So I know now you've got a daughter and a wife that you adore, and you live this way. And so you're going to raise the next generation very differently than how you were raised.
Yes.
And that's what it's about. It's about taking, the best of what you had, but making it better going forward. Right?
Well, I hope the people that are listening, I hope they get your book, because one thing I want to say is just by going through the interview and through parts of your book with you, I relearned things. It opened up new learnings for me just about my family. And, in order to heal, we have to really be able to identify the wounds. And many times the first thing we reach for is a Band-Aid,
Hmm.
but that just covers it up.
It's like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet.
Exactly. So this going through this whole process with you has been extremely helpful for me and has helped that healing continue.
And oh, by the way, I feel like we sort of developed a different level of our relationship, which has been cool.
Yes, it has been really cool.
So because of that interview process, because of having to understand things, because of getting context, it was like, wow. I mean, I don't know if it did that for you in reverse, but for
It
me,
did.
it really added context to so many things.
It absolutely did.
So where I was the girl who built walls, not bridges. I was like, I learned to build walls, just to get away from the chaos. It was like, huh, why am I doing that? I started to question my own strategies, so it was really interesting.
But when our strategies aren't working, we need to question them.
Yeah. And what works
Yeah,
when you're 4 doesn't work when you're 40.
that's
so,
for sure.
so it's really sad when you realize that the strategies you've been using and you developed when you're 4. So
Well, I thought I was right.
right, exactly. I love this. This is so we've got another week scheduled. I'm really excited about that because I want to dig more in next week. You're coming back, which makes me really happy because I want to dig into more of the strategies. I mean, I think people are gonna when this is over, they're gonna sort of see what you overcame, which was a lot. And I know a lot of the people watching are gonna want to know like what are specific strategies. So I want to just like chat with you about some of the stuff that that we worked on when I was in Hawaii, that you worked on with people that you're coaching, that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be very, very powerful if you'll
Cool.
do that with me. Awesome.
I look forward to it just as I look forward to this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So this is my Uncle Bob. And I just want to tell you, if you are struggling, you or someone you love, you're struggling with addiction or anxiety or suicidal thoughts, please reach out to someone. We have some experts that are
Yes.
amazing. You can call 844-818-0616. And we have someone, on call that can guide you. For other tools that might help you, some of the tools we've even been talking about, you can visit tanaamen.com. And I hope you'll pick up a copy of Relentless Courage of a Scared Child at relentlesscourage.com. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you next week.
Love to see you too. Love you, honey.
Love you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, here we go.